This is your STAR Test Security training for 2019-2020. Training is mandatory every year. They like for us to go over what test security is. Test security is just pretty much preserving the integrity of the test materials, including TELPAS, online testing, paper testing, from the initial pickup of materials until they're returned at the end of the testing. As always, this training doesn't replace reading the manuals and all the other resources that I give you. I usually try to give you the STAR testing manuals a couple weeks before testing, giving myself a little bit of time to know exactly what tests you're going to be giving. That way you have time to highlight and get yourself ready. I always like to just remind people, be prepared to know how the test day is going to go, what you're supposed to say. It's pretty self-explanatory on telling you exactly what you want it to say, but just make sure that you're prepared for that. Kids tend to kind of feed off of your unpreparedness, and we want them to be prepared on test day and everything to go. Remember, there's two types of irregularities. There's serious irregularities and procedural irregularities. Serious irregularities are those that constitute a call to TEA or a write-up for something that happened. I don't foresee any of this happening. So serious irregularities would be such things like giving specific answers on the test, pointing to test questions and giving hints, going through to see what questions they answered right and wrong when they turned them in, all things that have to be turned into TEA as an irregularity. So procedural irregularities usually are a result of something that I have done wrong. Maybe I put the wrong test boxes in, or test booklets in the boxes. Didn't give the right accommodations, something like that. These things can be fixed radically. They don't require a call to TEA or any type of reporting. It's usually something we can fix pretty quickly, and there are most likely procedural irregularities every year. So here's just some more examples of procedural irregularities. Again, things that we want to keep from happening, but things that we can fix if there's an issue that should arise. Just a reminder that there are penalties for violating test security. You can have sanctions put on your certificate. You can also have a certificate revoked. Most likely there will be investigation, and then depending on the severity of the irregularity, further action to follow. So let's just not let that happen. So there will be more instructions on test procedures as they arise, but just a rundown of the things that are in your test box. I usually bring the test boxes around to you in the room that you will be in. Inside your test box will be a test roster. It will show all the kids that should be in the room with you and any accommodations that any of those students might get. You'll have your test booklets and your answer documents. You'll also have a seating chart, which I'm going to go over in a bit. Any accommodations that are noted on the roster will be there in the box for those students. A testing do not disturb sign for you to hang out on the door. For you new people, notices of students still testing. We have 3 little sheets of paper that have different times designated on them, and all those are for is for you to designate how many kids you have still testing in your room at that time, and you'll just slip it under the door. That way we kind of know where we're at on testing, and we don't have to knock on the door and interrupt you to count the kids. There's also an I need a break sign in there. You'll just slide that under the door out into the hallway so that the people who are relieving you can tell that you need a break. I just ask that you be mindful when you're taking your break. I know you've been in there staring at the walls and you need to get out of there, but so does everybody else. Some people have been waiting to go to the bathroom, and we can't relieve them until you come back. So just, be mindful of others that might need a break as well. You'll also have a cell phone baggie for collecting all the students' cell phones. So our cell phone policy here is to collect the electronic devices from the students prior to testing. And I will say that make sure that you check for smartwatches and stuff like that because that's becoming more common. You'll collect all of those. Teachers and test administrators do not have to turn off their phones, just maybe put it on silent in case of an emergency, and also in case you need to contact me for something that I've forgotten or something that I've screwed up in your testing box. So keep those on silent. You can use those. We also do not return the cell phones to the kids until everyone in the room is through testing, or we have come and removed the students that are through testing to another location. You can give those students their cell phone for leaving, but if everyone is staying in the room, nobody gets their cell phones until everyone's through testing. So this is just a copy of the seating chart, the little grid at the bottom left. Just get as close as you can as to identifying where the kids are sitting in proximity to you and each other. You can write the whole group time. Make sure you write the room number and the grade and the subject that you are testing in. It's important to fill this out as completely as possible so that later we're not having to try to figure out who was in what rooms. The back part is really the most important here. Mainly the student names and their start and end times. And the very last column that you'll see over there, if you can help me out and just make sure that you've totaled all the times, because I have to report on their answer documents who took longer than 2 to test and who took longer than 3 hours to test. So it's nice if those are already totaled so that I can just scroll down there real quick and see if there's any that I need to identify on their Scantron. So first and last name are important, time to test, total time to test, and then if you want to do the test booklet and form numbers, that's always helpful too. So this is just notification that the start time does not start until after you have finished reading the directions and you tell the students that they may begin. That's when their testing time starts. They must be through recording their responses before the end of the time period. They can't unless they have additional time. Once the time frame has ended, they're not allowed to continue testing and they must put their pencils down. We usually don't have any kiddos that are not using extended time that come close to that, so that's usually not an issue. I've never really told you guys this, but I feel like you probably already do this, just kind of letting the kids know how much time they have left to test. Like I said before, most of them have plenty of time and they don't run out of time, but there are a few that push it to the end, and I think the kids just kind of like to know that they're okay. So just remember to remind them every hour how much time they have left. I think that would just kind of ease their mind knowing they had plenty of time. Nothing changed on the calculator policy. This just shows what calculators are allowed and who must have them. Students in grades 5th grade through 7th grade that are allowed a calculator because of their accommodations, those will already be in the testing boxes. 8th graders that are taking math and science, they will just use their assigned calculator, but 5th through 7th grade that have to have them only with a plan, those will already be in the boxes for them because it's a different calculator. No changes to the dictionary policy. I usually get with the reading teachers ahead of time just to make sure that we're going to have enough dictionaries in all the classrooms. I kind of rely on the reading teachers to take care of this for me, and I really appreciate that y'all do this. Just kind of making sure that there's at least one dictionary for every 5 students in a testing room. Just some real quick accommodation reminders. Remember that only the accommodations that are listed on the testing rosters and included in the testing boxes may be used on the test. If a student thinks that they should have an accommodation that they don't have there or that they're supposed to have, just notify me, send me a text, let me come down there and let's check it out because it's possible that I've made a mistake and left something out. But don't just give them the accommodation because sometimes they don't always know exactly what they're supposed to have, and that could result in a testing irregularity. Remember, if you're giving an oral administration test, you're not allowed to read the reading selections, only the questions and answer choices. Also, for 4th and 7th grade writing and the English 1 and English, um, no part of the editing selection or the test questions or answer choices in a writing assessment can be read aloud. So last year they had all of the booklets sectioned off for a revising section, an editing section. So you know when you get to the editing section that you don't read during that time. Everything else can be read. Just remember to be actively monitoring, walking around the room from time to time, sitting quietly but while still attentive, just making sure that they're staying on task. I know in the past we've had some issues where the ones that were done can sometimes be disruptive to the ones that aren't done. We don't want that to be an issue, so just kind of make sure that we keep an eye on that and that everybody has a fair chance to test undistracted. When it's time to return the materials, if you'll just put your I need a break sign out and somebody will relieve you to come get so that you can turn them in. Just make sure that when the kids turn in their bubble sheets that you just kind of scan them and make sure that everything has been answered. If they have left something blank, just give it back to them and tell them you have not recorded everything. Please go look over it. And then we'll get somebody to relieve you so you can turn them in. This is just a reminder for those who have not turned in their training module certificates. If you haven't completed those were due today. So get those turned in to me when you can. This only applies to certain people, but was the best news of the day. For TELPAS, there were no changes to Kinder and First. Those teachers will continue to calibrate and rate as normal, but for 2nd through 12th grade, all that those teachers ever had to calibrate and rate for was the writing. This year they have decided to allow one central rater for the district, so that will be me. I will do the online training, I will do the calibrations, and I will rate all of the writing selections for 2nd through 12th grade, just to give you guys a break. So that's one less thing that you have to worry about. You will, however, have to collect the writing samples for me. So Roxy will get with you and give you some instructions on when you can start collecting writing samples, what those writing samples have to look like, how many you're supposed to have, and so forth. You will also get those turned into her, and then she will turn them into me so that I can rate them and get that reported for us. So good news. That's it. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or holler at me.